Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is a College Torch webinar. It's a pop-up webinar about students' bandwidth. What can we do when students start to reach their bandwidth? How can we recognize that that's happening? And how can we support them, whether we're students, counselors, or parents? Today, I have with me, we've got Carolyn Kaplan from Admissions Mom. She is an awesome professional who works directly with students and is also the moderator of the forum Applying to College on Reddit, which has over 1 million members. Brianne Boyle is an IEC from OC, from the Orange County. And she is both the founder of BB College Prep and also the former president of WACAC, which is the Western Association for College Admission Counseling, which puts on amazing sessions regularly, and some of them are open to the public. So even parents, I encourage you to check out WACAC, WACAC, the organization for college admissions counselors in California and Nevada. Not necessarily on the slate of speakers, but joining us is also Amber Thompson, who is an IEC in California. I'm so glad you were able to join too. If you want to join in the conversation, really, this is just something casual. When I say pop-up webinar, I just mean I'm happy you're here because we're going to talk about things that for parents are going to be very important. We all want to challenge the kids, I think. I think that keeping them in a bubble is something we mean to do. I think that when we're in school, academic challenge, we know this to be a good thing. That coming out of our comfort zones as adults is good. Coming out of our comfort zones as students is good. This is how we grow. And yet we live in this world today that um, it pushes us. I think it pushes us as adults. I think it pushes us as parents. And the students are pushed. I think the society pushes them, the culture of their school is the local society, um, but also this greater society and our problem of college rankings and college admissions saying you must achieve blank when in reality there are only a very small handful of spots at the blank schools. And so it has to be okay. It has to be okay if our students can't get um, necessarily one of those spots, but what we get is the reward of challenging them to become their best selves, to step out of their comfort zone so that they're truly ready for college when they get there, and just to have this awesome college match, this college fit where when they get there, they're going to figure out, their goals. They're going to figure out how to achieve their goals, and they're going to figure out themselves a bit. So that was my little introduction here to why we're talking about bandwidth at all. Uh, let's start the conversation. When students reach their limit, what does that look like? Like in our meetings, one-on-one with students, or if any of you work in groups with students, how do you know a student who has been pushed just a little too hard? What are the signs? Um, Carolyn, have you seen anything like this?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually going to make one quick correction though about the
Please do.
introduction, not me, because I'm not the moderator. I'm a moderator of the subreddit. There are about 20 of us. So I just want to make that very clear. There's a big moderating group. It's not just me trying to do that by myself. Um, but that's that. But as far as the bandwidth, I heavily rely on parents to communicate with me. Let me just put that out there first. I try to make it really clear. I don't work with parents. I work with the kids, but I try to make it really clear to the parents that if they start seeing signs of bandwidth issues or kids being too stressed out, to please communicate it with me, because sometimes the kids won't show me, but they'll go tell their parents. And so I want the parents to tell me so I can have that conversation with the kids. Because I do everything virtually. And so it can be hard sometimes to see subtle cues happening virtually. But generally, I look for if they're shutting down, if they kind of have stopped responding to questions. Um, if they get tears in their eyes, I mean, there are some really big signs, right? Like if they get tears in their eyes, if they tell me they're exhausted, I mean, it's just kind of like looking for visual cues. If they start just like looking down and not looking at me, and wanting to disengage. And then also like every kid is so different that like it takes a little while to get to know each kid and what it's going to take for them. So it requires a lot of communication. I'm curious to see what the rest of you think and what I can learn from you about that.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I'm happy to jump in. Um, I mean, very similar. I will say, if I reflect back to my first baby days of being a college advisor, when I was first starting, which is, I've done this now for 13 years, so it's been a while, but when I was first starting out, I think I would work with students, and when I would find them sort of shutting down or not responding to me, the technology was a little different. We didn't have as much of we weren't texting as much and things like that, but I would often assume a student just didn't want to do the work. And I think just as I have understood working with students more and, just like matured as a professional and as a human being, understanding that that's not usually the situation. Sometimes, every now and then, right? A student is like, I just don't want to do this. But there's usually a reason. Either it's they're frustrated by the work for some reason. Maybe they do this with all of their work and you've got to find another way to encourage them to engage. But often it is just what we're talking about. Like they are overwhelmed. So I have learned that if I see a student disengaging, especially a student who is normally pretty engaged, I will usually try to do the friend text where I will text and say, hey, I haven't heard from you. You haven't really been doing stuff. Are you okay? Are things okay? Like, are things going okay? Or if we have a meeting coming up, I'll just say like, hey, how are things? Like, I see you didn't do stuff. And I have found the students are pretty upfront about it. Teenagers are pretty open and will just say like, oh, I've had so much AP homework or I've really, had a lot going on. Um, and if I do that even one time, even if they're not shutting down, but I just check in with them, kind of do a preemptive check-in, I find that they're quicker to tell me later when they do get overwhelmed because they feel like, oh, it's a safe space. I know that she's asking me how things are going. She's checking in on my homework, for school before we dive in. So that's how I'll usually see it. And then I think asking is a good way to find out. And then if I don't have a student engaging, I will usually reach out to a parent and instead of saying, hey, this student isn't doing homework, I'll start with so-and-so hasn't turned some stuff in, hasn't been, is everything okay? Or is there something I should know about? Because sometimes it's totally unrelated, right? And there's something going on in the family maybe, and they just aren't talking about it. So I've tried to be better about leading with assuming the best because students are human beings, right? And they're going through stuff too. So
Totally. I heard so much wonderful perspective there that I relate to, that I've seen before. Um, and and I think I'll put a little punch, a little emphasis on the one about asking them, as that uh, maybe sometimes the one that we can forget, because we can't always catch students in that window of when they're ready to share. But also, we're not going to catch them in the window of when they're ready to share something sensitive if we're never asking. As always, we're trying to strike a balance and observe, watch our students. Uh, and I think that the thing I'd add is the language of silence, that students communicate to us in a lot of different ways that for them are very immediate, that they know that it's happening, and they want us to pick up on a cue, but they won't do it by sharing openly the way they feel. As for adults, that's really hard to say, hey, I'm feeling this way because of blank. um, and so how would they share those with us? um, in the room, it's much easier to sense, like in person. In these moments, I can always sense it pretty easily. And then I may not know exactly what it is, but I know to navigate something, which is huge. And on Zoom, I've figured out how to pick up on this. And it's all in the eyes. And it's true for TV actors too, as opposed to stage actors, because stage actors are running around the stage. But when you've got the camera on you, there's really just the face, and you've got some stuff going on, but the eyes are huge. And when I see a student who isn't with me, I feel like I usually see it in the eyes first. Um, the other thing is like the benefit of Zoom, which is that if a student wants to, they can message me privately, and this happens more than I expect. And it happened the other day, where I'll be having a conversation in a room, a Zoom room like this. There's going to be a parent and a student. They're just in different rooms, but I start to get the private messages like just to you, and it's not going to say something revealing like hey, you should know blank, but it's kind of like the student knows that I'm having a conversation with everybody right now, and for some reason they want to tell me something. They want to say something maybe innocuous in the private chat, and it's just a lot of good information in that moment. I also am always grateful in those moments that the student trusts me. Whatever it is, the student wants to reach out, and they're reaching out directly to me, even though I'm in the middle of saying something. Uh, I I think I'll move the conversation a little bit um, uh, more towards the course selection area right now. Um, how do we recommend that students choose courses? Maybe just in the context of sometimes they don't know their own limitations. Like they don't know where they need to stop. I feel like I mean, this isn't a fact, but I feel like what I notice is that in the school counselors are often playing the role of like, let me stand in the way between you and the thing you want to do that's not going to be so great. They're trying to protect students from failure. And I feel sometimes like my role would be to say, okay, let me investigate this further. And is there a way that you could do this with support? It's kind of like the extra thing. And that's not always the right way, because sometimes students really did need protection from, even with support, protection from failure, because we can't let our students get so overwhelmed or overloaded that they're not successful. And so with that, I'll just ask you, how do you go about as a process doing course selection with students and recommending their best courses ahead of a selective college admissions process? Carolyn, I know about your 4x5 process. Do you want to tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think I probably picked that up from someone else. I don't know whether I can take credit for it, but just I absorb information. I recommend that they take no, 5 academic courses all 4 years. So 5 Englishes, 5 languages other than English, 5 history, social sciences, 5 sciences, 4 science, I'm sorry, 4 of each of those, and 4 maths. The math and the language other than English tend to be the two where we have snags over and over and over. Math is, stats or calculus frequently, or, I recommend that they try to take calculus by the end, especially if they're applying to super rejective colleges. Not all the kids I am working with do apply to super rejective colleges. So then I kind of have to like backtrack and talk to them about like what we're going to talk about your individual situation. And then the language of other than English, again, my recommendation is for kids applying to selective and rejective colleges for all 4 years. I get a lot of pushback on that, especially from STEM oriented kids. So what I try to tell them is like, look, this is what Yale says. This is what MIT says. Like, if you want to apply those to those colleges, you're in charge. Like, you make your own choices about your college, your high school courses, but you need to do that educated with an education behind you. So, look up and see what the recommended courses are for the colleges where you're applying, and find out, are the colleges you're even interested in applying, and find out, because I don't want them frequently. Sometimes if a kid comes to me as a junior, or even as a rising senior, when I take on half of my class, they will only have 2 years of a language other than English. And so, and they want to apply to super selective colleges. And so then I'm like, well, we need to get that at least a 3rd year of English in somehow. Not English, for language other than English, a 3rd year of that. And so then that can cause a lot of stress. And that's when I definitely see a lot of like, okay, I've hit my bandwidth. What is this lady trying to make me do? And I'll throw out all sorts of options: summer school class, language bird, self-study, like there are other ways to solve this problem, but I want you to be educated as you think about it. So that's my main thing, is just providing information for students and then allowing them to make choices about what they want to do, as long as they know
Yes.
what they're doing.
Perfect. And as soon as you said language bird, I'm just thinking of all of the times that I got so creative about how to help students, take rigorous courses and at the same time not hit their bandwidth in school. And usually, my experience, I like language bird, so no one mishear me, but I'll say that usually, if I've brought up language bird, I know I've been a bit too creative and that the students may actually need something a bit simpler, or it's just a bandwidth thing where, they may say they don't like something, but they can't handle it. And they may say they can't handle it, but really they don't like it. And it all kind of comes out in the wash is that nobody can do literally everything, except for those, we know these few students who can do literally everything and they make it seem like it's normal. Brianne, I saw a lot of nodding from you, and
Yeah.
I assume that there's a lot you agree on, but I'm curious, uh, do you ever see the breaking point being stats, AP stats versus AP calculus, and how do you
Oh.
navigate that?
Yeah, for sure. I also tell my students they really can't get away with taking fewer than 5 academic classes each year. So that's funny. I like that whole 4x5 thing, but especially senior year, that's when students will be like, oh, but I'm taking 4 APs or I'm taking 2 honors and whatever. And like, so I'm good. My counselor said, I'm good. And I said, yes, you're absolutely, that your counselor's not wrong. You've done everything you need to do to graduate. You fulfilled your A through G's in California, all of that. But I really am not going to let you get away with taking 4 academic classes senior year, because now it looks like you're kind of stepping back, and you need to show, like, they're still going to see the college, or the colleges are going to see the classes you're registered in. So you need to show that you're still performing at that same level, right? But I do get students who stress over the math thing. I counsel really, really focused on balance, because I don't believe that it's important, and I think I'm backed up by data, that it's important that people go to, as Carolyn called them, highly rejective or highly selective colleges, right? Like, I don't think that's important, and there's nothing that supports that it is. So I still have students who apply to them. I still have students who are great fits for them. Those colleges are still great options, but I really try to focus students on, let's find schools that are a good fit for you academically, which not everybody's going to be like. Don't try to become what Columbia wants, right? Trying to do all those APs and then you're pushing yourself to the limit. So that pushes into course selection. When I'm talking with students, I say, listen, if you're really struggling in higher level sciences and you're not trying to go into a STEM or science field, maybe we back off and take, maybe you just do regular anatomy senior year, and that's totally fine, but you're still doing 4 years of science. And maybe instead that'll make sure you can manage, your AP lit class or whatever it is. So trying to make sure that students push themselves in the subjects that they're better in and that they enjoy, because they're more likely to do better in those courses than to say everybody has to do APs and everything. As you said, Robert, we have those kids who can take AP, IB, everything and do fine. And great. I was not that kid. And most people aren't. So a lot of people see those students and think, this is what everybody's doing. Everybody's like this. Everybody's doing this. And the reality is that is such a small fraction of students. Most students are not taking AP and IB everything. So I try to kind of let them know, like, hey, no, what you're doing is normal. You are the normal. Like, you're taking some hard classes. You're not packing your schedule. That's normal. So then we get to those math classes at the end, right? And I will push a little to the AP Calc if engineering and computer science programs are what we're looking at. I will have the conversation of, if you have not taken a Calc class, twofold, could be an issue. Schools that are applying, or that you're applying to for those programs, will look for Calc, and it will look like a miss if you don't have it. They will look for Calc. But the second one is, you get into those programs at the college level and don't have any background in Calc. That what I'm hearing from folks who have worked in admissions for those types of programs is that often that can put a student at a disadvantage. It can be harder. So for some students, that might mean regular calculus. And I will still back off if it's just too much. There's no point in taking AP Calc if they're going to get a C in it, right? Like, that's not good either. So if that's going to be too hard and that you need to do AP stats, I'm just very realistic about, like, that will be tough with some of those majors. But if we're not talking about those majors, Yeah, man, stats is fine, in my opinion, if calc is going to be too hard. So I think it's every student and every situation and balancing where they can be successful. Um, but AP stats I would prefer over like regular calc or regular stats if they can handle it. But again, every student's different. Some aren't, and some are only doing calc pre-calculus senior year, and that's also totally okay, you know? You probably get it, right? Where they're like, oh, I need to take summer math. Like I have a student right now who really wants to take a summer math to bump up, and but no, but seeing where he's landed academically, I'm like, I don't actually know if that's the best idea for you. Let's just make sure you're successful in the math in the full year, as opposed to trying to bump yourself up and then get into a place where your grades are lower and you're struggling and you're having a hard time. Like it's not necessarily a good return on investment to try to like push for everybody. That was a long answer, sorry.
Totally. And what you said about senior year is true. It's, we want students to take rigorous courses, and especially there's more than just rigor, right? There's breadth. They can take all of the core courses, which includes VPA, visual performing arts. It includes foreign language, which is not a silly thing. I think that the silliness of foreign language is sometimes a narrative that students will tell themselves that says this thing that's hard is not worth doing. But if we can get them to take, just hit the breadth points, that is valuable. It's another bucket than rigor, but separately, then we can talk about where can you dive deeper. Now, when students have the right course load in senior year that's challenging to them, but where they still have bandwidth, they can give us the bandwidth for the college stuff. And it, for me, is so difficult. It's so difficult when students are like, I've got it. The schoolwork stuff, I've got it. But your thing is just a little too much. They don't usually say it like that, but they may not show up to meetings, or when they show up to meetings, they're not focused, and they're not completing assignments. And so they're really just hoping that the meeting is gonna like get them through. We're not writing an essay in the meeting, but for some reason it's kind of like the college application part, or the college admission or the college search, that this is the part that's not graded. We're going to let this part go. That is like culturally so established in students' heads as a narrative, that the things with grades are the things that matter, and the things without grades can't possibly matter, even when it holds logically so strongly as like these are your college applications. You're working so hard in school to go to college. You have to do the applications well in order to go to the college that you're working so hard to go to. But that thing isn't for a grade. I'll do it tomorrow or during winter break, or maybe, I don't know, on New Year's Eve, like at 11 p.m. It's that's for me, I think that's where I notice myself giving students the most room is in senior year. I know that UCLA wants students to take the most rigorous courses, and they're not going to check the grades sometimes, most of the time, in 12th grade. But at the same time, I really need students' bandwidth in 12th grade. I need their bandwidth the summer before 12th grade to work on college applications. Honestly, I need a good bit of it the second semester of 11th grade so that they can do their college research and not just skip that part like it doesn't matter. I think that I got this feedback 3 years ago. So that was during the pandemic. I mean, I'll give that context, but I had a family share, parents share with me that the student was experiencing college research fatigue, that as the student was doing, I mean, honestly, not enough college research that we had had a full conversation yet, but it had been a few meetings of not showing up with any research. Like this was the thing that was constantly putting the student into overwhelm, or like they couldn't quite, I mean, like short circuit. I mean, I get this way, like so much is going on. How can I can't make a decision? That's so hard for me because I know how important the college search is. If you are applying to colleges and you don't know anything about them, what are we working for? And also, is someone going to stop you at some point and say, hey, why do you want to go here? Or why is it worth the money? Or sign here on the dotted line to take out an enormous loan for something. I don't know. For me, it feels so hard to pull back in that place. College research, And at the same time, I feel like that's kind of my journey as a professional, that I've gotten to this point where I am actually, with some students, really trying to make sure that they can know as much as possible about their colleges without having to do the work there, because it's like it's that important. It's that, like, let's do it together. Like, let me just give it to you. Anyways, does this make you think of anything? Maybe Brianne, do you have any experiences with this?
Yeah, I think it's a good point that, students are already doing everything for their homework. And even the students who aren't in AP classes, right? Like they still have homework, they still have their sports that they're doing, they have all that stuff. And then sometimes they're even testing, right? Like they might be testing in spring of junior year, which is a pretty common time for students to be taking the ACT or SAT. So they might be prepping. Then sometimes students even use the summer after 11th grade to prep again, or to, get ready to take a test in the fall. So there's all of that layered on top of their normal stuff, that layered on top of what we do with them. And I do see sometimes that's sort of when they start running out of, fuel a little bit. But so the way I manage that, I guess, is I try to give students tiny little bite-sized pieces. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir with the professionals here, but giving them small chunks, so having them research colleges, and and every student's different. So there's some students I can give them 13 schools. They'll go research all of them, come back, and we'll have a conversation. They'll have all these notes. Other students might only have the ability to do 6, because of whatever reason. That's fine. So I'll try to meet them where they're at. And then I give little pieces of parts. So we do some like pre-application work in the spring of junior year to try to, lift that off of the summer, where we're kind of getting activities and things in place. And then with essays, I really do try to push as much in the summer, which I'm sure everybody does, but starting with one, doing just the main Common App essay, and then attacking the UCs, and then, doing supplements. And because I think it's a lot. I know there are some other professionals who kind of have students say, hey, here are the essays, we're going to brainstorm ideas, and then go write them. And then there's all of them in front of them, right? And some students might have 12 or 13 short answers and things they have to write. So I have not seen that work. So I have found that in order to help them, kind of giving them little small pieces, and then saying, hey, this is all we're working on right now. Now, maybe you have to turn something in a week, but it's a small piece, and then I'll give you something else and you turn it in next week. It's a small piece. And I have found that students respond better to that, because they see college admissions as this gigantic thing, right? Like, oh, I have this application, and they've never seen it. We've all seen it thousands of times. Thousands of times we've looked at these applications. So we know how easy it is to kind of get in there and fill stuff out, but they don't know that, right? They have the emotional burden of feeling like, this is my college application, this is so important, and they've never looked at it. They don't know what's expecting. They don't know how to do that. So I think keeping that perspective of, I've seen the Common App 75 times a day, but they don't. So making sure that I'm helping them understand, what's easy about it, or doing bite-sized pieces. So it doesn't feel like they're looking kind of down the tunnel and seeing all of it at once. I
Yeah.
think is helpful.
Yeah, and it makes me think that there may even be a benefit that we could provide to families by giving them a quick walkthrough of the application, that it's too soon to think about, but also they're thinking about it. Maybe if we just give them
Yeah.
a preview of it to let them know, you know, here's what it is. Like, let's let the monster out of the closet, but also it's not that bad. I mean, I think the thing in there
Yeah.
is this big.
Yeah.
Something that connected for me a week ago or two, as a few weeks ago, having a conversation with another colleague, was that I could reduce the college research burden on students by just writing a check, that there are programs out there that will just give them some, more information about colleges. And for some students, this is going to be the difference between them faking their college search, their college research, and having at least the core points. And yeah, I mean, that's a check I want to write. So I am like signing on to a new program when I'm sort of create it myself type of person, just like my personality. But no, I want to write that check, because this college search thing is kind of important. I know college applications are really important. I call them different things. You have the college applications, but if you skip the research and the search part and just get straight to the applications, you're going to notice that somewhere. And it's kind of like the worst time to notice what you skipped, I think, would be to get to the college campus and then figure out there was something wrong. And those are the moments I don't see. Carolyn, I'm curious, since we have some parents in the room, how would you recommend that parents, can you give any advice on how they can support students as they're challenging themselves, but also maybe approaching their bandwidth?
So I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Brianna was talking about, and I think this is a way, and I'm going to give terms for what she was using. So I spent a lot of my spring with my juniors talking about tackling the elephant and the frogs. So, and kind of teaching them what that is. So the elephant is this feeling of like college applications, everything that entails. And so then I teach them about how to break that down. So maybe the college research is an ear. And then we have like all these different parts of the elephant that we then kind of like, there's no way you can eat an elephant all in one sitting. So you have to break it apart. And for people who are vegan, you can think of a different analogy, but it kind of helps them visualize it. And then the frogs are like all those little things that are jumping around, driving you crazy that you need to get taken care of like immediately. And so it's like this balance of taking care of the frogs and taking care of the elephant, the big picture thing. And I think for parents, having an understanding of like, I think so many parents are just like, all right, did you get your work done? Did you get your work done? Did you get your work done? But there's like no initial, like specific ear, trunk, tail, like for the kid, like, did you work on this? And so, I don't give a whole lot of homework to my students, and I definitely do bite size. So like when I assign college research, it's like 3. I might give them a lot of colleges to look at, but my only say, and they're like homework, and I use homework very generously, to look at 3. The ones who do way more, great. The ones who don't do anything, great. Like I don't care, because I do a lot of body doubling with my kids too. I have a lot of neurodivergent and ADHD kids, so we just do a whole lot of the work together. But I think if my parents, look at the homework, and then they'll know specifically what to ask their kids. So did you work on this or did you work on that? But I think the number one most important piece of advice I can give to parents is to set specific location in your house, or set a specific time where those are the only times or places when you can talk about college admissions. And otherwise kids feel like they're going to get barraged no matter where they're coming from. And so I know with my own children, we could only talk about college admissions at the kitchen table on Sunday afternoons. And any other, because I wasn't doing college admissions then, but I was pretty obsessed. And I've been a teacher my whole life, and I'm an education junkie. And it was like, I wanted to talk about it all the time because I found it very exciting and interesting. And my kids found it very stressful that I wanted to talk about it all the time. So we had to make that rule. And that really helped them know that I wasn't going to be attacking them every time they sat down at the table, or when they were sitting on the couch, or when they were in the bathroom. And, so I think that can be really helpful. And I think kids need to do their share on that bargain of the deal. And I talked to my kids about this, and I talked to the kids in Reddit about this too, is that if you're going to make that deal with your parents, then you have to kind of meet them there. So on Sunday afternoon at the kitchen table, if that's what you've agreed upon, you do need to be willing to sit down and talk to them and tell them what you're doing, and tell them what you're thinking about, and tell them what you have done, rather than just wanting to keep it all inside because you're worried that your parents are going to get too stressed out about it. A lot of kids don't want to talk to their parents because they're worried it feeds their parents stress. And I think they're right in a lot of ways. They're trying to protect their parents. And I think, so it's this balance in the family of like having open communication, but not all the time. Figure out where that is, that the communication should be open.
Can I, Robert, before you jump on to the next one, can I add something in about parents? Just because parents have come up twice. And something you said before earlier, Robert, about your meetings, and then just something that Carolyn was talking about. I agree with you about the setting the time, but I have also found sometimes I can't tell when a student is hitting a bandwidth as well when parents are actually in the meetings all the time. So I always tell families, this is your process. I will never dictate to you really, other than a few times where I will say parents aren't allowed. They aren't allowed in my essay brainstorming meetings because I need the students to be open and forthcoming about stories and ideas. But otherwise I tell parents like, yeah, you're welcome to any meeting. Like nothing we're doing is secret, but sometimes I have to ask a parent to step back because I can tell that a student might not be as open about either one, their opinions about colleges, but also expressing if they're stressed, or I can tell that their vibing is kind of stressed, right? Like their mom is talking to me and engaged, or their parent is talking to me and engaged in the meeting, and they're not doing anything other than also getting excited, like you're saying. But I can see the student just sort of shutting down a little. Like, okay, this is my mom or my dad talking about the college thing. And then they're disengaging because it is more stressful for them. So sometimes I have to ask a parent to step back. So I would just, if there's parents in the room or watching this later, just be aware of that. You know, sometimes a kid just needs a little space to be a kid. And if you're working with a professional like one of us, I think everyone here would say we will raise the flag. If we meet with the student alone and we feel like there's something going on or they're going off the rails, we'll let you know. We're never going to meet with a kid and then just let them completely fall on their face and fail. But sometimes you have to step back to kind of let that student share with us, you know, if they're feeling overwhelmed or how they're feeling about stuff. So I just feel like there's been a couple things and I thought, oh, this kind of ties this in nicely.
And I'll just add on to that. My meetings are only one-on-one with students. If parents, I have parent and family meetings, but they're separate from the college admissions work. They are strictly to talk about issues, to talk about things that parents might be concerned about. But like all the work I do with students is just one-on-one with students. Now, if the parents are standing outside the door, okay, or if they're walking back and forth in the kitchen, great. I mean, I don't mind. That's great. And sometimes they'll throw in a line, but you know, it's like I make that really clear to parents. Like, this is your kid's journey, not yours. So
And then for me, because it sounds like we're all thinking the same thing about it, where it's kind of like just we know the value of that connection with the student in terms of making the process work. And also we love the parents and we want to support them too, and we want them to be involved. In striking that balance, something that I maybe have always done is that just in the very first conversation about it with parents, I'll say, parent attendance at student meetings is completely optional and not required. And I find that it mostly kind of works out after that, because parents should come when they want to. And most of the time the student is into it, especially at the beginning. And it's kind of like we're all creating that initial relationship to do the work. And then there are some places where I think parents are just going to feel that they're not really supporting, you know, like essay brainstorming. And parents know when their kids are clamming up, I think. But definitely, I think that, like Brianne says, I'll have to step in and say something if it's, you know, if it's making students clam up, or, you know, if I think that we could just try something new, is how I usually say it. But Brianne, I thought what you said was right on, is that when I think about it, the parents that, you know, I thought about talking to, or I wanted to talk to about stepping back a bit from the process, have always been the most positive ones. It's not actually, I mean, sometimes it is, but it's rarely the ones that are putting on lots of pressure. It's actually the ones that are there like as cheerleaders, and they've got their pom-poms and they're just ready to go. And then I mean, it is actually really awesome, and it's heartening, but it's kind of like, if they're there, I need to not answer their questions and focus on the student, or I just have to tell them what's up. It's that students need some space to do the work well and to be themselves in a moment, because they're growing and changing. Just like when they do college tours, college visits, that I think parents and families should always find 20 to 30 minutes at least where students can just wander around, maybe barefoot or something. I don't know, just wander around the campus alone. Like parents go to Starbucks and they can just have like the venti, just like the biggest one, and just relax and kind of facilitate this transition. It is a journey, but it's also a transition from to students becoming independent, to becoming themselves in a new place, doing new things, and hopefully becoming their best selves, making mistakes in a safe way, but in a place where they're supported and with a community of people who share their values. So this kind of closes our conversational piece. And now I aim to expand our session by taking in questions or other topics. I know, by the way, speakers, I know that maybe someone has to log off at a certain time. If you have to go somewhere, the conversation goes on no matter what. And Please just log off if you've got to run, but otherwise we'll just kind of start with questions. Adrian, were there any questions in the chat? Did anybody toss any out?
Not that I see, but if anybody has questions, feel free to put them in the chat or just unmute.
Amazing. Any guests want to ask any questions?
By the way, I always say that if we don't have many questions, it means we did an amazing job. But looks like Chloe does.
But I still think we did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Hi, Chloe. Shout it out.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Chloe. I'm currently a community service leader for the City of Irvine's Disability Services. I'm really passionate about the college, journey with students, especially students who receive special education services. And I really want to ask if you notice challenges, with students who receive special education services or certain, things that might come up more compared to like general ed students who are applying to colleges, or something you see with their parents, or do you communicate with like special education staff? I'm curious. So, yeah.
Who wants to take this one?
I'm happy to give a insight. I don't know if Carolyn's still here. I know she said she works with a lot of neurodivergent folks, but so I've definitely worked with, I don't specialize in it, but I work with students who have learning differences and are neurodivergent. And I would say most of the time I've made aware of it by the family and the students. Usually they're pretty open about that. There have been a few times where I've asked questions to know that, but it's not something that they're required to disclose to me, right? And I always try to operate as if I have to operate under FERPA. Technically, by law, we aren't held to FERPA as independent contractors. However, I try to operate under that, which is the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act. So I don't ever want to share anything. So I don't reach out to the high school counselor myself. I always tell families, if there is anything that can be helpful in having a dialogue, that they should talk to their counselor or their ASP leader, or whoever they're working with at their school. And if it's helpful to include me in those, that if the parents give permission, that's totally fine. But it would be, I think, a bit inappropriate for me to make that ask to the school. But if the family wants to involve me, that's fine. Most of the time, by the way, they don't need to. Usually it's just that if I'm made aware of the needs of the students or the specialized requirements of classes and things, that I try to work with in that framework, and give and advise within that framework so that they can then make sure and, clarify with their school and make sure that that's the correct way to go. So.
Very good. I know Carolyn, I could see you've got an idea. Oh, okay. No. Okay. So, okay. Bye. The law that parents are used to interacting with in the high school that guarantees the services to the high schoolers. This is the IDEA law. Is an awesome law, and it does not apply to colleges. And I think this is the big thing for families to know, is that they're not guaranteed in college the same things that they're guaranteed now. The law that governs college students would be in colleges would be the ADA. And basically, there's kind of a minimum that the law requires. Basically, a student who has a learning disability needs to be given the kind of this baseline level of equal access that everybody gets, the same access to all of the learning opportunities. But that's highly subjective, that universities can interpret that in lots of ways. And we know the boxes that we can check for universities. If we really want to do the bare minimum required by law, we can make that happen. And just not a philosophy thing, but just the budgets, right? It can just happen this way, that some universities are going to give the bare minimum required by law. I think that becoming familiar with what that looks like what is the bare minimum, and is that enough for this kind of, for this student in front of me, is very valuable. That for many students on 504 plans, they are going to be just fine with what the ADA guarantees them and what the school provides. And then also, when that doesn't align, it's not good because the student isn't supported, and it's especially not good when it's a surprise. And so this is kind of the work of the college counselor in the college search process for students who have neurodivergence and who need accommodations. I think that for me, I do try to become familiar with this. I try to know, especially what schools are highly supportive, like the University of Denver. I want families to be able to go to, to go to tour colleges that would support a student with mild to moderate ADHD, or another situation requiring accommodations. However, there are also a higher level of need and accommodations required where where a specialist may be best to come in. There are wonderful specialists out there, including Elizabeth Hamblett, and she's wonderful. I think that there are honestly, I can think of a number of them who actually go around all the colleges to figure out what exactly is offered and to what degree, and how that's changing over time in a way that it involves a huge level of commitment from them. I know that I do this for LGBTQ students, and I think that some other people wonder, how I'm getting around all the colleges to ask them all of my nitty-gritty questions about a specific group of students. This is sort of the benefit of talking to a specialist when it really matters. And we can't all have a specialist for literally everything, but for students with a high level of need and a lot of priority around finding a school that will offer them a certain level of support around their accommodations, I do recommend talking to a specialist for that.
Thank you so much. Is it okay if I ask one more question? I don't want to take up too much time either. You
I
guys.
schedule till noon, and I think I know Brianne's gonna head out if she has to go, but I'm here for you. Go ahead, Chloe.
Another question is that, so I'm predominantly in the like Mexican American community, and there's been a big dialogue regarding like low was it admissions for Hispanic students since the pandemic, and there's a lot of family members are not supportive with a lot of Hispanic students moving forward with colleges as they want to move forward with the more like was it career aspect and try to provide more financial stability to families immediately instead of more of investing with a four-year college opportunity with like a bachelor's. And I want to know, how do you support students who are in circumstances where their parents might not be supportive, with a college application? And how do you provide, I guess, more support than a general student who might have, support with their family pursuing college?
The question it touches my heart a little bit because my office is in Sierra Madre. It's kind of an affluent area, but I bought my home a few years ago in Doherty. It's it's a lower income area, and it's got a lot of diversity, but there are going to be Latino students in this area. I volunteer in the area with DART from the Sheriff's Department and with the students. And I get to see different kinds of students. Everybody's different, but I have noticed the thing that you just said, which is that students with just, it's like if they lived in a different place, they would be working on entirely different things. I can have one conversation with these students and see just how incredible they are, and they do so much, and it just comes from who they are inside. And at the same time, the things that restrict them, I don't always understand, and that's where I just really call in my cultural sensitivity and interest in learning. I just want to learn about where these ideas are coming from, that a student who's I just see them as having wings and just like take off. When I just hear their stories and hear the way they talk and how they talk about things, and why they would need to stay next door, I don't totally understand it. I know that there's a cultural value around staying close, that sometimes it's more than a cultural value. It's also actually financial, where the family needs support. But I've had a couple of these conversations recently with people in schools who are working with the students. And one of the things that they're going to do is to make the logical case. And it's almost like a persuasion, ethos, logos, pathos thing. But there's a logical case where you can lay out the numbers around what they're about to make if they don't, if they just do a 2-year college, and stay close, but also like, what are the expected salaries of different universities out there? and and trying to break a misconception that it's the university next door or it's Princeton. I feel like that's what they were saying. Like they would ask each other, they would say to me, they would say, "Are you applying to any Ivies?" And it's like, "Oh no, I'm going to Cal State LA." I love Cal State LA, but it's like Cal State LA or PCC or like there's so many options in the middle between Cal State LA and Princeton, including options that give uh, students grants in the amount of their full demonstrated need. In addition to that logical approach of it kind of explaining just how that commitment of 4 years to a university could change their whole family's trajectory, I think there's also the emotional kind of appeal of uh, that you are here working for your for your family to give them as much as you can, but your family wants you to be as big and as awesome as possible. And kind of trying to paint this story, like a story, telling a story of them to their future. Could you imagine if blank? Or can I introduce you to someone who has been here? Or a college tour. Oh man, like when you take students on actual college tours and they get to actually meet a real student, it changes the entire narrative. And then, of course, there's also the ethos thing, where I have no idea why this is so effective. But when students see that somebody like famous that they love went to a school, I have no idea why that is so effective. But like, oh, maybe I should go. Davidson, I think Steph Curry went to Davidson. uh, Chloe, so Chloe, that was my answer, was the ethos, logos, pathos approach. And Brianne, I'm curious if you would advise any differently.
Gosh, no, I mean, that's a good answer. I also work with mostly affluent students because I work in Orange County, and the reality is most people who do what I do as a consultant, a private consultant, will work with mostly more affluent families or families who are a little more comfortable. So, but that said, in my work, I purposely do things through, the Western Association for College Admission Counseling, which works with students in all over. I've worked with scholarship students, and I've also volunteered time with other like community-based organizations to work with students. So I also teach in the UCLA College Counseling Certificate Program, and I work with LAUSD counselors there. So we actually talk about this type of stuff all the time. And I think it's hard, right? You're dealing with if a family isn't necessarily as supportive of a student going away, and there's lots of reasons for that, right? Like it's easy for a student that I'm working with in Orange County who's coming from an affluent family to go away to college and that not be a problem for the family. But another family might say, listen, it's hard for our kids to leave right away because they might be supporting by helping with childcare. They might be supporting the family with a job. So there's other factors involved. So I think it's breaking down the idea that, yeah, that you have to go away to college, or that it's something that is going to pull that student away from, the family. And by the way, it's not just financial stuff. It can also be cultural too, right? Like if you're saying, hey, we don't like when our family goes far away, we'd like to keep our family, close by. So I think it's speaking about what are those options. Maybe it's community college. Maybe it's just looking at local Cal States or schools that are close by. But I also try to speak to parents about, if you don't let the student go through the process of at least looking at from some four-year schools and applying to a few, you lose that window. So applying isn't going. And I use that for any situation where a parent might be kind of stressed about it, or even a student might be stressed about it. I say, listen, just applying doesn't mean you are committing, doesn't mean you're attending. So this is just you getting an application out there to see what the options are. There are ways to, get fee waivers and things to make the application process, financially more feasible. And then put in some applications for a few schools and then see what the options are, because then you can make a decision as a family to say, hey, this does make sense for us. It makes sense for us financially, but it also makes sense because whether it's close by or it's close to another family member. So I think it's honestly just being sensitive to the fact that different cultures, different families, different needs exist. And there's ways to still approach the college process that don't have to be, what they show in movies, right? Where it's like you're going off to college on the East Coast. Like that doesn't have to be that way for everybody. There are fantastic, amazing programs at our Cal States in California and through our community college programs too. So doing stuff like that, and supporting the transfer process might be a way to do that. And also I'll throw a plug. I don't work with a lot of students who do this, but there also are pre-professional and more career-oriented programs, certificate programs, and things like that. And it might not be a 4-year degree for someone. Someone might be pursuing like a career-based certificate or a work program or something like that to go into a field where they don't need a 4-year degree, and that might be a good route for that student. So I think like opening them up to those options is good, because they might not know that those exist too.
Right. And apprenticeships where they may get to start working immediately. They may get paid and be on a career route immediately, even if it doesn't have a certificate attached to it. Those are powerful programs. Yeah, I'm with you about Cal States. They're so cool. 23 of these campuses. So I can't say the same things I say with UC, where you just apply to all of them and figure it out later. But they just get the fee waivers out, and if students qualify for the fee waivers, then they can just apply and figure out those options over time. And yeah, it takes some warming up with some of these families. A question I like to ask to start is, I actually, try not to over focus on the major, with a lot of families. And so I'll ask students if they really imagine themselves living the college life like they see in the movies, which you had mentioned, Brianne. And some, some students, they're like, yes, or like, can I don't know, but yes, also yes. Or do you see yourself living at home, or do you see yourself not having that residential community and kind of focusing on something else, or focusing on saving money? And usually this will kind of guide the students to an initial list of Cal States, where if it's easiest if the students say yes, residential community, because there are only 5 residential Cal State campuses in the system of 23 campuses, and there's a 6th one that is like that feels like a residential campus, even if it's not. Brianne, do you remember them? It's our 5 residential campuses. They're
For the Cal State?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have to look that stuff up. I'm so terrible.
No, it's okay. I mean, because this is my go-to way of kind of just starting the conversation. So I talk about this all the
Yeah.
time, but not everybody else would. So it's going to be Sonoma State. It's going to be kind of the smaller one. It's going to be Cal Poly Humboldt, which is just a hidden gem, and I wish they weren't having the students
Yes, agreed on that
boats.
for sure.
Did you hear the students are living on the boat? It's why we just sign up for housing early, and we always make sure that we've got a plan. But they also have a 10-year plan that they are halfway through. They're doing such a great job. Hidden gem, Cal Poly Humboldt. So it's Sonoma State, Cal Poly Humboldt, Cal Poly SLO, which is this is the #1 school that my students love more than any other campus easily in the whole country. It's going to be Monterey Bay. And which one am I forgetting?
Was it San Diego?
So San Diego is the one in the city that feels like it's residential, because everybody's just hanging out in the city. Like, you have a great time on campus, then you go out into the city. Students out of the district are required to live on campus for the first 2 years. It's just kind of like energy everywhere. Now I'm blanking on this. I'm gonna roll my eyes when I remember it though. Oh, it's Chico. I love Chico. Oh, Chico's awesome.
Chico.
Chico State. Yep. And so that's the one, like, if students are like, oh yeah, I want to do this, the school from the movies, it's Chico. So Chloe, I'm sure I overshared a little bit by going into specifics on those Cal State campuses, but I just do it because I love them so much. Our students have so many options, it's expansive. Like, the problem isn't that, like, where are they going to go, who will accept them? It's the other thing. They have so many options. How can we just point them in the right direction and just like give them the fire to keep, just to walk?
No, these were wonderful answers. And like, this is super, I would even say, healing to my college journey, because I didn't have a great college application journey. I was rejected everywhere and had to do an appeal to UC Irvine. And to know these tools now to encourage, people in my community to think about college is exciting. And the opportunities that, higher academia and community college can offer is truly something beautiful that I appreciate. So thank you both, and thank you to everyone who spoke.
Amazing. Thank you, Chloe. That was just really nice to hear that just now. And Brianne, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining today.
Of course.
Yeah, Carolyn not being here, but we appreciate her awesome input, especially for parents. Oh my gosh. Adrian, thank you for coming and keeping track of the notes, helping us stay organized. I think this is the end of our conversation today, but I hope everybody feels excited for the next one, and reach out whenever we can be of support, because this is what we do all the time. We love this. All right. Enjoy your weekend. Bye, everybody.